listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. I am David Pendergrass. I received an email today with a good question with some good points to be made, I think, that are worth your time about anger. This listener said, my wife really struggles with anger. He said, he does as well, but she handles the kids a lot more, so there's more opportunities to be mad. He says, we've been listening and talking through your advice on emotion, and it's helped me some. And I'm paraphrasing here, but they see more that emotion is a healthy thing, and there's no shame in having emotions. And if, by the way, if you don't know what he's talking about, I've done a couple podcasts on feelings. I did one not too long ago on negative feelings and so forth. So I encourage you to listen to them, because it's really important to understand that emotions are not bad. Emotions are telling us something. And it's very important to listen to emotions. And that was what he's addressing here. So now he's saying, the question is, when angry, how do we redirect our actions to healthier outputs and keep from yelling and physical actions? Now that we both understand that anger is a light on our dashboard, great analogy, that's in a previous podcast, the question becomes, what should we do when we notice it? What habit should we replace with the yelling? And he says, my method is to retreat from and think about the situation. But this is difficult to do for my wife as she juggles 3 toddlers at a grocery store, for example, so I'm not sure how to advise her. And he says, it feels like a basic or silly question, but it's something on his mind. Thank you, listener, so much. This is not a silly question. I'm not saying that just to encourage you. It's not at all a silly question. It's a very good question. It really is. And moreover, it's an especially important question to ask for Christians. But Christians ought to care about what we do with our anger. You think of texts like Ephesians chapter 4. I like the NET translation here. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down. And the NET says, on the cause of your anger. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on the cause of your anger. And we have texts like this throughout, of course, Proverbs and whatnot. But so it's okay to be angry, but we don't want to sin in our anger. Do something that Christians would not do in our behavior. So I could give other examples. And Jesus talks about when you call someone to be angry at you, if your brother is mad at you because something you've done, you're supposed to go try your best to reconcile the relationship as much as you can if you've caused it, which assumes that you know that you have caused it and so forth. But anyway, instead of talking about those Bible verses and specifically, I'm just generally saying it's important for Christians to understand that what we do in our anger matters. And the first thing that other podcasts and a couple others I've done is to first recognize we do get angry, and anger is a healthy emotion. Okay, so what do we do about it? I have a few responses. Now, I will say these, but these are not necessarily triaged in the sequence in which you're supposed to do them or think about them or reflect upon them. Some of these might be simultaneous, depending on the situation. Maybe you do steps 1, 4, 3, 6, and 8 in that order or whatever, however many I give you. But my point is, these are things that matter. I would reflect on what I'm about to say when you are not angry, and then try to reflect on it when you are angry. Okay, so the first thing I would say is you need to realize there are different levels of anger. The American English language has different words to describe different levels of anger. And for example, frustrated, annoyed, ticked off, furious, or you might not like this vocabulary, like pissed off, raging mad. There are different vocabulary words to describe our level of anger that people use all the time. In my life, in my experience, when I use the words frustrated or annoyed, it demonstrates mild anger. It is under the umbrella of anger, but it's different level. I say this not because I'm just being nerdy here, though I am a nerd. The point I'm trying to make is, in my experience, most if not all English speakers understand this. Because people might say, yeah, I was really annoyed. And sometimes people say, man, I was ticked off. And they might emphasize it, ticked off. And their vowels, they'll lengthen their vowels. It's like making it italicized if they were writing it down. They were composing their thoughts. That matters because most people, I think, and if you're one listener, if you're one of them or your wife is, if you thought carefully about it, you'd say, yeah, there are different levels probably of my anger. There's mild annoyance all the way up to raging, I'll murder someone anger. I say that because it matters what level of anger you're at. It matters that way because you want to name or label the anger appropriately. So my first tip is a lot of people who struggle with anger issues can mislabel their anger. For example, if someone cuts you off in traffic instead of going, I can't believe it, that makes me furious, does it really make you furious, or are you just frustrated, or are you mildly angry? What level really is it? If you're in the grocery store with your kid and little Susie knocks off a can and it falls on the ground and you have to pick it up, does that really tick you off, or does it go, daggum, that's frustrating? What you label it will really influence how you feel. What you label it will really influence how you feel. So be careful on what you're labeling. Be careful on how you label it. Instead of saying, again, you might not like this vocabulary, but this is normal people talk. You might go, man, that pisses me off. Instead of doing that, you might say, man, that makes me frustrated. And I'll talk about, but next, there's a but. There's a but, okay. Now, anyway, the first is, you're going to get yourself really, really, really worked up in your behavior if you're labeling everything at the top of the level. So let's say it's 0 to 10. 0 means I'm not mad at all. I don't have any emotional feelings at all. 10 meaning I could not be angrier. I could not be more livid, furious, hatred filled, whatever your word you want to use there. If you're really at a level 3 or 4, but you label it at a 7, you're going to raise up the number inside. You will. You just will. So just pause for a second when something happens and figure out what it is. Okay, figure out what it is. That's one major tip. Another major tip is to figure out the reason for the anger. What's the reason? Why are you angry? Whatever the level is, why are you angry? Now, there's all kinds of reasons a person's angry, but some of the most common ones are there's some injustice. It's not fair. Someone cut me off in traffic. Someone cut me off when I was in lane at the grocery store. I wanted that last box of cereal and someone came in front of me and took it and I felt like it was mine to take. It feels like an injustice. That makes us mad. A lot of people are mad because of unmet expectations. A lot of people are angry because, like I said, they really thought something was going to happen and it didn't. It makes them mad, which for a lot of people might feel like an injustice, but really it's not injustice. It's just your expectation didn't happen because life's not fair. A lot of times people are angry because they're hiding sadness. Now, I have a sermon, it's a podcast on anger and how to deal with it. If you check my podcast on that, how to deal with anger, and I cover some tips on that might be helpful to you. But that matters because there are reasons for anger will help you label it correctly. A lot of people are angered easily because they weren't taught to grieve. Maybe it wasn't allowed at home. Maybe it wasn't modeled at home. And so what was modeled was anger or rage. And so one of the reasons why you might be struggling with yelling or rage outbursts is because that's just what you learned. So instead of saying that my flower, as you were a kid, my flower got bent over and messed up, instead of being sad about it, it was okay to be mad about it. I would stomp my feet and throw a rock. If you saw your parents do the same thing, that's what was modeled for you. So you're trying to figure out the reasons for your anger outburst. What is the reason? And if you pause for a moment, especially if you're not in the moment, if you're not in the moment and think about it, think about this for a second. When I typically have outbursts, it's because blank. Most people follow patterns. So what's your pattern? I typically lose my temper when blank happens. Okay, what's the blank? Fill in the blank and figure out the reason for the anger. Now, is that really worth the rage? So, for example, let's say, you know what? Come to think of it, I'm usually the most angry when someone takes something that was mine. And I'm very angry because it's not fair. Well, in my next question, if you're a therapist, I'm going to ask you this. When in your childhood did that happen? And everybody always has an answer. They're going to say, oh, yeah, what happened a lot? My brother always took it before I did, or my friends did, or my dad did, or my mom did, or I knew I didn't have privacy. Someone always read my journal. So I always feel like now when someone tries to invade my space, it makes me outraged. But you got to figure out what the reason is. You've got to figure out what that is. And the reason for the anger matters a lot because you're going to get to the heart of where the outrage is coming from. And very often when you have not all the time, But very often when you have a pattern of rage issues, it's not because the thing itself causes the rage. It's because there's something much deeper going on inside you that's from your past. You probably have some unresolved grief going on. That's usually the most common one in my experience. Another reason why people can struggle with having that's from your past is that you grew up in an environment where you were not allowed to express anger. And so now that you're older, or there comes a point in life you finally just let loose because now you're finally free to do it. Maybe you had an alcoholic mom or dad. Maybe you had a mom or dad with a serious psychological disorder. Maybe when you got very angry, they said, calm down. It's not good. Some people heard the words, it's not Christian. Don't get so mad. That's not good. You might have heard those things. I think everything I just said is complete false and nonsense. But people grow up hearing those things. If that's the case, a lot of times they didn't feel permission. Maybe if you got mad. I grew up in a home where one of my parents absolutely disallowed negative emotions toward that parent. So I couldn't do it. So what it did is it taught me not to express anger, basically, certainly not to authority figures. I could address it to my colleagues, sometimes my brother for sure, but in general not, and certainly not to authority figures. To this day, it's very difficult to express anger toward anybody in an authority figure over me. Very difficult. I have to work very hard to express it if I'm able to do it at all. It's almost impossible, if not impossible, because I'm still working on it. Because I was taught as a child, implicitly I was taught, you're not supposed to demonstrate anger. Well, that's what's really going on to me. One thing, so sometimes I might find myself wanting to blow up because what happens is I'm finally feeling this release. Finally, I need to be able to do it and get it out. You might be like that. So there's all kinds of reasons, but usually there's either unresolved grief and or you are not allowed to express it. And sometimes people have blow up issues from their childhood because they saw it. The mom and dad always went off the handle. And every time in my therapy sessions with people, they always can tell me what it is, which means you probably can too. I remember interviewing a young woman who was basically calm and cool all the time, except she had a bad temper and bad language. And I asked the same question. We asked a series of questions. And I got to the point of, what about your childhood? Who in your life had anger issues? And she thought for a second, my mom. Oh, yeah. I said, give me some examples. And she gave some examples. And I said, so is that like what you're doing? And she started to kind of smile and tear up like, yes, absolutely. That's exactly what I learned it from. Anyways, there's a reason why it comes from. Now, you need to address that. You need to address it wherever it comes from. You might need a therapist for that. Maybe you need a good journal. But you need to ask it. Sometimes you need, again, an outside perspective to help you think this. But if you're going to do it yourself, if you refuse to go to a therapist, which is perfectly acceptable to go to a therapist, if you refuse to, you can't, whatever, then I'm encouraging you now, write it in a journal. Think about it. Why am I so angry? And is there a pattern here? Yeah, I typically get mad over blank, or I lose my temper over blank. Why is that? Think for a second. What's going on that makes me so angry? Put it into the abstract. Like, it's because I feel like someone's stealing from me. It's because I feel like someone's disrespecting me. It's because I've been hurt in the past and betrayed, and now I feel like that at all now. It makes me angry. Put in the abstract, that is, get a general principle. There's a pattern there. And then whatever that is, you've got to address that issue. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. But if you have a pattern of it, you need to address that belief and that history where it comes from. Maybe you're just deep down, you're really sad. Some people get anger outburst when, I could go on for a long time because I don't know you and you're not doing therapy, but these are just some common ones. I've known people who have a little bit of anger outburst all of a sudden when a child does something they think will embarrass the parent. And that makes them very, very angry because they feel anxiety. When they were a kid, their parents got very mad at them when they did anything to embarrass the parent. And so they were taught you're supposed to be very, very sensitive to embarrassment, which frankly is stupid and prideful, but people a lot of times don't have coping skills. And so they learn that from their parents, that's, don't you dishonor that family name, no matter what it was, no matter whether what you did was righteous or Christian or not. If they thought it was perceived as something bad on the family name and they get mad at you, you maybe do the same thing. Some people get anger outbursts at their children when their children does something that might upset someone else. Maybe they're in the checkout line and they're being loud. You know what? They're just being children. They're just being children. And as they're just being children, they're raising their voice and playing and whatever, and they see some other person, they make this face. They make a negative face like, ugh, that kid won't be quiet. And since you were raised or taught implicitly or explicitly that kids should never bother their adults, your anxiety skyrockets, and so you blow up at your children. Be quiet! I said be quiet! And you want the person who made a face to hear you yell at your kids, because deep inside what you're really doing is you're wanting mama or daddy or grandma or grandpa, whoever taught you that nonsense, you want them to be happy. So that other person who might be upset is really just some childhood person who taught you that. But I'm telling you, in the moment, it's not just because they were doing that. It's just not. You say, well, David, well, that's not true, because sometimes maybe children might just do it and they grate on my last nerve. They build up and build up. That's fine. Well, that doesn't make you outburst. It doesn't. It doesn't make you outburst. It just doesn't. You could go, your impatience is waning thin, and your big moment of final frustration is to close your mouth and walk away, or take a deep breath, or cry. And there's all kinds of responses. It might be to laugh. It might be to do a push-up. It might do a jumping jack. In other words, your behavior, what you do in response to your anger, it's just your choice. It just is. Once you become conscious of it. But if you have a pattern of rage issues or anger outburst issues, and right now it feels like it's not your choice, it's because you are, again, dealing with some past wound or some past learned behavior, or you're finally free to express the anger. There's something going on that your past has a lot of authority over. And you need to get to the roots of what it is in the past. And if you can get to those roots when you're not in the moment, you're going to do a lot better. You'll be a lot more prepared. Hey, I'm going to take a quick break. Please listen real quickly. Hey, do you know any skeptics in your life? If you do, like I do, they want good answers, and we don't always know what to say to them. How do you know God exists? How do you know Christianity is true? How do you know Jesus existed? And so forth. Why believe the Bible? I mean, we can go on for a long time. I wrote a book that you might like called A Skeptic Challenges a Christian. A Skeptic Challenges a Christian. You can see it on Amazon.com. So far, praise God, the reviews have been outstanding, and I think you might find it helpful. I write it like I'm writing to a non-specialist, and I write it like I'm having a pretend conversation. So it's not like a normal book. If you don't like normal books or you find them pretty boring, this is not like a normal book. It reads like you're eavesdropping on a conversation. I think you'll like it. I think it might challenge and equip you and encourage you in your own faith or your own skepticism, and it might help someone you know. So think about someone you could purchase the book for and give it to them, and perhaps it could help y'all have a great conversation about faith.
If this podcast helps you, why don't you share it with a friend? Share a glimpse of the kingdom. Have you visited davidpendergrass.com recently? There are some great things that you can share with your friends. Would you like Dr. Pendergrass to come visit your church? He could speak and provide classes and training on multiple topics. Visit davidpendergrass.com for more information.
Okay, here we go. If you can, and this is where it becomes really powerful, if you can figure out what that thing is, then you can address that false belief. You can basically soothe yourself. So you would say something like this to yourself. Let's say, for example, I give it for example, being personal. I grew up in a home all my childhood where one parent disallowed me to have those kind of negative emotions, particularly anger toward the person. And so I, to this day, have to practice being angry. And then when I do, I have to practice demonstrating anger in a way that's not, very unhealthy and certainly not sinful. So on the inside, what I do is I might start feeling the rage to come up, for like the anger of, oh my goodness. And part of me wants to have some kind of little temper tantrum just to prove that I can have a temper tantrum, because I didn't have that permission as a kid. And so I address that on the inside. I talk to myself. I say something like, yeah, that makes me very angry, and I can express it, but I'm going to make it. Or I'm not dealing with my parent right now. I'm not a child anymore. I'm addressing that exact issue from my childhood, not the thing that set me off. That's one way you can do it, is to address that childhood thing. I'm not going to blow up right now because really if I blow up, that's really about my grandfather. If I really blow up right now, that's really about my mom because she drove me crazy. If I blow up right now in this checkout line, it's really about my dad because my dad didn't let me buy the stuff I wanted to buy. If I blow up right now, it's really about my cousin who took advantage of me, who betrayed me. If I blow up right now, it's because my ex-husband did X, Y, Z. So that's one thing, is to kind of go deep, to address that right on the bat, right in the head, as it were. That's one thing. You can do that. Another way to soothe yourself is simply to say, address it. Yeah, man, that's frustrating. Golly, that makes me angry. But I can handle this. I won't let this ruin blank. I won't let this ruin my day. I won't let this ruin my shopping experience. So you're addressing it. Yes, that makes you very, 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 very angry. If it really does. Or if a proper label is, yeah, that's very annoying. It is annoying. But I'm not going to let that annoyance ruin my day because I can handle that. Really, I should have said this first, but if you're still listening, you've probably heard this before, and if you have, it's right. This is scientifically demonstrable. It is a fact that what you choose to think about addresses how you feel. And you can label it a lot. It makes me mad, 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 angry, 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 mad, mad. The more you do that, the angrier you will become. The angrier you will become. It's just a fact. It's a fact. I had that mistake for a while too. One of the things I did to heal, and I'm still healing, from my inability to demonstrate anger as a child, is I started to say it on the inside. Like, I'm mad. That makes me angry. And then I practiced just saying it. And my wife would say, oh yeah, when you did, you started saying it all the time. And what happened then is I got in the habit of saying, that makes me angry, that makes me angry, that makes me angry. Well, when you say that every time it happens, it's like it goes from 0 to 7, 0 to 8. Well, then you do get very, very angry. And that's not healthy. So what's healthy is to address the annoyance, address the injustice, adjust whatever it is, and then soothe yourself. Man, that makes me angry. But I can handle it. I'm not going to let that ruin my day. It's going to be all right. It's not either or. It's both and. Address whatever it is that's the injustice, and then soothe yourself. So, man, my kids drive me crazy sometime. But it's not the end of the world. Man, Susie won't shut her mouth sometimes. I need a break just for a second. If she would just give me a break to think for a second. Man, that annoys the snot out of me sometime. But that's not going to ruin my experience, and I am so glad to have a child. Do you know how many people in the world would do almost anything to have a baby, to have a child? You know how many millions of parents around the globe have lost their babies through death and cancer and accidents who would give anything to have their baby back? Who would spend all their energy and time listening to their kid talk, or throw the cans off the whatever, and they would do nothing but laugh? What would you do? If all your children were dead, would you be just as angry from now on? Would you go, I'm so glad they're dead. At least now I don't have to be so angry all the time. At least now I can finally control my anger. Now, if the answer is yes, you need to go see a therapist immediately. I mean that. You need to go to a therapist immediately because you have serious wounds or patterns that need to be addressed. If the other answer is, it seems to me there are basically two major answers. If the answer is, no, I don't want my children dead so that I can control my anger outburst, then you need to do what I just said. You need to ponder that for a second and say, wait a second, am I overreacting? Should that really ruin my day because my kids sometimes drive me crazy? Are they really driving me crazy, or is it just annoying? So you can soothe yourself. I won't let picking up those toys again bother me. I'm so glad that I have children who put toys on the ground. My kids won't be quiet in the checkout line. They're being children. I'm so glad I have kids. My kids won't stop dancing and laughing about the silliest things. Then laugh with them. Dance with them. Well, what will people think? Who cares? What? I hope you don't parent and make your parenting decisions based on what strangers might think. They got to be super quiet in a restaurant. How do you get children to be super quiet without muzzling them? The second best option of muzzling is to throw an electronic in their face. And that's what parents do. They muzzle them because they're so inept at raising their children, of knowing how to allow their children to be able to entertain themselves and to make noises and laugh and interact with their children. They throw a phone in their face when they're 3 days old, which is horribly unhealthy. And the studies that are coming out demonstrate this. Anyway, and that is not about the children. It's about the parents' problem of parenting. Well, the kids are bored. So what? Every child is supposed to learn how to self-soothe themselves and deal with the fact that life is not entertaining every second. Not to mention the fact that you can play with them some. Give them a kid's toy. Give them a book. Let them look around the world. I mean, sing and play with them. So they need to learn to soothe themselves. You need to learn how to soothe yourself. And that can happen. It can happen by what you say to yourself. What you say to yourself is very powerful. It's very, very powerful. So if you're saying on the inside one more time, I'm so mad, this ticks me out, blah, 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 you're going to get really, really, really worked up. If you say, golly, that makes me mad, but I'm okay, I'm going to make it. Yes, it makes me angry, but it's not going to ruin my day. It's not going to ruin my day. Okay. You're going to calm down. You're going to get that amygdala to calm down. And while you're saying those things, breathe deeply and close your mouth. I'm going to be all right. It's not going to ruin my day. It's not. This is all about my mom. This is all about my dad. It's okay. They're just being children. It's okay if that person made a face. I don't care. I'm not parenting based on other people's perception. This is not the end of the world. I can handle this. It's not a big deal. Another thing I do is I pray and I give it away to God. It's okay. Dear Lord Jesus, help me keep my cool. Help me take a deep breath and calm down. God, I'm very angry right now. That Susie did that again when I said no for the 183rd time. But God, I give to you my anger. Please help me respond in a Christian way. Please, Lord Jesus, it matters to me how my witness is. It matters to me that my children will learn how to deal with anger. And I want my children to learn that anger is healthy, but not outbursts, not cussing, not name-calling, and not physical violence, and not the quiet game, not guilt messages, not manipulation, not addictions. Just saying I'm angry, deep breaths, processing, and moving on. Let them see that's how you metabolize anger. It comes up, you admit it, you validate yourself, you do, and then you comfort yourself, you soothe yourself, you take a deep breath, and you let it go. Give it to God. Give it to God. I hope these things are helpful. If they're not, sorry about that. But these are things I do. And many, many people I know do them. And there's other, all kinds of books and literature you can read on this. One book I recommend to you, it's very short. And, well, okay, 2 books. But one book in particular is very short, and it's $3 on Kindle on Amazon. I think it's $4 paperback. It's a short book, but it's good. It's by June Hunt, H-U-N-T, June Hunt, called Anger. Anger, Facing the Fire Within. June Hunt, Anger, Facing the Fire Within. I would read that book and try to memorize it. That's a good one. June Hunt also wrote a little bit longer book called How to Handle Your Emotions. Anger, depression, fear, grief, rejection, self-worth. How to Handle Your Emotions by June Hunt. How to Handle Your Emotion by June Hunt, or Anger by June Hunt. Those are good guidelines, good little books for you to read, and I think they're going to help you a lot. God bless. Well, the conversation isn't finished. You can always reach out to me on social media. Are you on Facebook? I am too. At Glimpse of the Kingdom. Glimpse of the Kingdom on Facebook. Be sure to like it and you can see updates there. Also, if you're on Twitter, check me out at Dr. D. Pendergrass, at Dr. D. Pendergrass, or at Glimpse the King, at Glimpse the King. And I try my best to respond to comments and questions on there as quickly as I can. If you want more, there are many more resources on the podcast and my blog. Go to my website, davidpendergrass.com, davidpendergrass.com, and you can see a full list of the podcast, and my blog is available for free. Are you active in a church right now? I'd be happy to come out to your church and do all kinds of classes and workshops there. Check out davidpendergrass.com, davidpendergrass.com for more information. And may God in His great grace give you even just a glimpse of His kingdom this week. See you next time.